All right, let's talk about something a little weird. Sleep talking. Ever wondered what is actually going on in our heads when we start chattering away after we've completely conked out? Well, today we're going to uncover the science behind it. Let's dive in.
We've all been there, right? It's the middle of the night, everything's quiet, and then suddenly your partner or your roommate starts having a full-on argument with who knows who. It can be absolutely hilarious, maybe a little creepy sometimes, but it for sure makes you wonder, what is going on in there?
So this whole thing, it's not just some random quirk. It actually has a fancy scientific name. Somniloquy. Yeah, it sounds pretty serious, I know. But you'd be surprised just how common this really is.
Okay, so somniloquy is what's known as a parasomnia. And parasomnia is basically just an umbrella term for all the weird and unusual things we might do in our sleep. So it's in the same category as stuff like sleepwalking or even night terrors.
Now, a lot of people think sleep talking only happens when you're dreaming, right? But that's actually not true. It can happen in any stage of sleep, light, deep, you name it. And the episodes themselves, they're usually super brief, just a few seconds, maybe a couple minutes. The things people say can range from total nonsense to, well, surprisingly clear sentences. But here's the kicker. The person doing the talking, they almost never ever remember it in the morning. Not a clue.
So that brings us to the million-dollar question, right? Why? Why do our brains decide to start up a conversation when the rest of our body is totally out for the count? Let's get into the main triggers.
Okay, so a lot of the causes are actually things you and I deal with all the time. Think about it. High stress, a ton of anxiety, that can keep parts of your brain buzzing even when you're asleep. Not getting enough sleep is another big one. It just throws your whole sleep cycle out of whack. And get this, it can actually be genetic. So if your mom or dad was a sleep talker, chances are you might be too. Sometimes it's linked to other sleep disorders or, even something simple like a fever.
Here's a really simple way to picture what's happening. Think of your brain like your smartphone at night. You put it on silent mode, right? Most of the functions are resting, and all the notifications, in this case, your ability to speak, are switched off.
But what happens when something overrides that? Well, things like stress or not getting enough sleep, they're like a glitch that turns the ringtone back on for just a second, and boom, a few words slip out while the rest of your brain is still completely offline.
Okay, so we've covered the why, but what about the what? What in the world are people actually saying when they're in this state? Well, it turns out it can be pretty much anything. You might hear something random and hilarious like, "Don't touch my food." Or it could be some dramatic statement, or maybe just complete gibberish. The good news here is that it's almost never some deep, dark secret you're letting slip. Phew! It's usually just a messy jumble of your thoughts from the day or little pieces of a dream.
All right, this is a question that I know a lot of you are probably thinking. If you hear someone sleep talking, or worse, if someone tells you that you do it, should you be worried? Is it a bad sign? Let's break it down and separate the harmless stuff from the things you might want to keep an eye on.
So on one side, you've got the totally harmless version, which is what most people experience. It only happens once in a while, the stuff they say is funny or nonsensical, and it's pretty quiet. But on the other side, these are the red flags. If it's happening all the time, if it involves violent shouting or screaming, if the person is physically acting out their dreams, or if you notice it happening along with gasping or other breathing issues, yeah, that's when it might be time to pay a little closer attention.
And the reason for that is simple. While, again, most sleep talking is totally fine, those really intense and frequent episodes can be a symptom of something else going on. The two big ones to be aware of are REM sleep behavior disorder, that's where people are literally physically acting out what's happening in their dreams, and sleep apnea, which is a serious condition where your breathing actually stops and starts while you're sleeping.
Okay, so let's say you or your partner are a sleep talker, and it's starting to get a little disruptive. What can you actually do about it? The good news is there are definitely some really practical steps you can take to manage it and get some quieter nights.
All right, first things first, and this is the big one. You gotta work on your sleep hygiene. Seriously, this is the foundation for everything. That means aiming for a solid 7 to 8 hours a night, cutting out things like heavy meals or caffeine too close to bedtime, and trying to stick to a regular sleep and wake schedule. All of this helps stabilize your sleep, which makes these little outbursts way less likely. And beyond those basics, managing your stress is absolutely key. Trying out some meditation or even just journaling for a few minutes before bed can really help calm your brain down. Another huge one, screen time. Try to power down your phone and laptop at least an hour before you plan to sleep. And of course, avoiding triggers like alcohol or nicotine is a really smart move because those things can seriously mess with your sleep and make these episodes worse.
Now, what if you've tried all these things, and the sleep talking is still really severe and happening all the time? Well, that's when it's probably a good idea to talk to a professional. A sleep specialist might suggest something called a polysomnography. That's a sleep study where they monitor everything overnight, your brain waves, your breathing, your movements, to get a really clear picture of what's happening. So, let's wrap this up. What's the main takeaway here? The most important thing to remember is that for the vast, vast majority of us, sleep talking is just a harmless little quirk. That's it. It's usually just your brain working through the day's stress, or maybe it's just a fun little trait you inherited from your family.
And don't forget, the most powerful tool you have to get a quieter night is something you can literally start doing tonight. Just focus on good sleep hygiene. Seriously, prioritizing your rest is the best thing you can do for a peaceful night, for you and anyone who has to listen to you.
So, that leads me to my final question for you. Now we have to ask, have you ever been caught sleep talking, or have you heard someone say something absolutely hilarious? I bet there are some great stories out there. Thanks for tuning into this explainer, and we'll catch you on the next one.